Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through the AS Maths paper. Now, question 1 is just integrating. So add 1 to the power, divide by it to get 12x to the power 4 over 4, which is 3x to the power 4, and then we need our constant c, since it's indefinite interval. Question 2, we need to use the rule that if we want to get another solution, we have to do 360 minus answer, because we know there's a symmetry, and we know that cos of theta, we know that repeats every 360. Now, we know cos of 60 is a solution, therefore cos of 300 should be another solution. And to get that, we need to plug in 320 into here to get 300, which should give you as well cos of 60. So they should be equal and give you 0 if you rearrange. Now, question 3, first of all, we rewrite this as index form, which is kx to the power of a half, and then we differentiate by multiplying by the power and then reducing 1 from that power. Now, if we do that twice, we get minus a quarter kx to the power minus 3 over 2, and then we substitute the x coordinate since it's only in terms of x. And if you do that, you get minus k over 32. Now, question 4 is a discriminant because we know that it has no real roots. So b squared minus 4ac has to be less than 0. If we plug in our a, b, and c, we get 4 all squared minus 4ac, which is minus 4 times 9 times p squared, and that's less than 0. Then we multiplied it by a negative number, which will flip the sign. So by negative 1, we get 36p squared minus 16p is greater than 0. And then we can simplify it into two brackets, which is 3p minus 2 and 3p plus 2 is greater than 0. And then we look at the graph where it's above is where p is greater than 2 over 3 and p is less than minus 2 over 3. Now, question 5, it's a factor theorem question. Now, if f of 3 is equal to 0, we just need to show that it's true. So if we plug in 3 into x here, we should get an answer of 0. So that should be true. Now, with statement 2, it says that that means that x plus 3 has to be a factor. That is not true, because if the function of 3 would equal 0, then x minus 3 would be a factor. Because if we solve that, we should get x equals 3. Because if it's x plus 3, then you're solving to get x equals negative 3, which is not the case here. Now, question 5b, we can either do this by long division or by inspection, but I did inspection. Now, to get the 2x cubed here, we need to multiply by 2x squared, because x times 2x squared is 2x cubed. Now we have a minus 7x squared here. So to get that, we know that 2x squared times by minus 3 would give you minus 6x squared. And to get that other minus x squared, we do minus x multiplied by this x here, which will give you minus 7x squared in total. Now, to get the positive 45, we need to multiply by negative 15, because minus 3 times negative 15 is 45. And then we know that we can factorize this bracket further to get x minus 3 and 2x plus 5. And then we could just simplify that into two brackets, which is x minus 3 all squared multiplied by 2x plus 5. Now, question 6. This is like natural logs. Now, we know that to find a dog's equivalent human's age in years, we multiply the natural logarithm of the dog's age in years by 16. So it's 16 ln. And then we know that the age is 5 years. So it's going to be 16 ln 5. And then we add 31 to it. So 16 ln 5 plus 31. And that simplifies to around 57 to two significant figures. Now 6b, a dog's equivalent age is 40 human years. Find the dog's actual age to the nearest month. Now we called the variable lnd because D stands for the dog's age. And then we know that if we use the answer from, no, not the answer from before, we use this information from before, we get 16 lnd plus 31 equals to 40 because it's equivalent to that. And then we solve for lnd, so we get lnd equals 9 over 16, and then we base e by doing the inverse of it. So we get d is equal to e to the power 9 over 16, which is 1.8 years. And that's about 22 months. Now with question 6c, we need to explain the behavior of the natural logarithm for the values close to 0. Means that the formula given on the website cannot be true for very young dogs. Now, if the natural logarithm is less than 1, we know that it's going to become more and more negative. And we know that negative, a number, can't be an age. It wouldn't make that much sense. So that would be your answer to that. Question 7, it's just rationalizing the denominator. So we multiply both sides, top and bottom, by 2 minus root n. So if we do that, we get 6 minus 5 root n plus n over 4 minus n. Now we want it in this form, where a and b and n are rational, but root n is irrational. So what we can do here is split this up into two things, which is 6 plus n over 4 minus n minus 5 root n over 4 minus n. And that should be your answer for this, where b is 5 over 4 minus n and a is 6 plus n over 4 minus n. Now question 8, we need to explain why angle A must be opposite the side of the length m plus n. Now we know that m plus n is the largest side, so opposite it should be the largest angle. Now the second part of the question, we need to use the cosine rule to show that cos of A is equal to m minus 4n over 2 bracket m minus n. I used cos theta, but it's meant to be cos of A. So if we apply that, we just use the cosine rule. I drew the triangle here, so we just use the formula. And this would simplify to minus 4mn plus m squared equals to 2 bracket m minus n. But in this case, it's cos of A, so it wouldn't be cos of theta. It will be cos A. Now, if we just factorize m out, we just get m bracket m minus 4n. And then 2m bracket m minus n, because if we just multiply that bracket out, we get 2m. And then if we solve for cos of A, we get cos of A equals to 1 over 2 multiplied by m minus 4n over m minus n, which is what is required in this question. Now 8b, it says you are given BC is the diameter of a circle and A lies on the point on the circle circumference of the circle. The value of m is 8. Now if we draw this out, we know BC is the diameter and A is a point on the circumference. So I just put A at any point of the circle. Now we know that this creates a right angle. From circle theorems, we know that a triangle in a semicircle creates a 90 degrees angle. And we know that from here, we can see that we can use Pythagoras and we can show that m minus n all squared plus m squared is going to give you m plus n squared. So if we plug in what m is, which is 8, I just did the long way, where you just factorize everything out. I mean, well, you expand everything out and then you solve for n. So if I plugged in 8 into here, we get 8 bracket 4 and minus 8 equals 0. So we get n is equal to 2. Or you can just plug it. So we have 8 plus n squared equals to 8 minus n squared plus m squared, and then you just expand that and simplify. You should get n equals to 2. Now this is a inequalities to define the region. Now y has to be greater than or equal to 0 because we know the region is above this line. Now we know that y has to be greater than or equal to x squared minus 4x minus 12 because we know it's above this x-axis. And we know that y has to be less than or equal to x plus 2 because that's this diagonal line. And we know that the region is below it. So it has to be less than or equal to. And they're all less than or equal to or greater than or equal to because they're all bold lines. Now 9b, we need to find all the coordinates. So to find a and b, we find the roots. And to find c, we find where it intersects. So it's going to be simultaneous equations. So the roots are x equals 6 and x equals minus 2. And then the intersection is where we equate them. And then we get x equals 7 because the x equals minus 2 is just the other point where they intersect, which is the root. So it doesn't really matter. So we just take the x equals 7. Now, if we plug that into x plus 2, that means our y coordinate is going to be 9, but we can plug it into either of them, but x plus 2 seems more reasonable. And then that would give you your coordinates of C. Now, the third part of the question, we need to find the area. So what I did was, we know the coordinate of C is 7 and 9. So we can find the area of the triangle. We know that point A is minus 2. So the difference from A to where the blue number is 7, that will give you the base of the triangle, which is 9. We know the height is 9 as well, so the area of the triangle is going to be 9 times 9 divided by 2, which is 81 over 2. Now to find the area of the blue part of the section, we need to integrate. So we know point B is where x equals to 6. So what we need to do is integrate from 7 to 6 of this quadratic, x squared minus 4x minus 12. So if we do that, we get an answer of 13 over 3. So to get the area of the shaded region, we do the area of the triangle, subtract the area of the integral that we calculated to get 217 over 6. Now, this is exponential modeling question. Now it says, a bottle of water has a temperature of 6 degrees when it's removed from the refrigerator. And we know that this equation is modeled by when it was removed from the refrigerator. So when the time is equal to 0, we know the temperature is equal to 6. So if we substitute that, we should get A is equal to 14. Now we know what A is now. So it says 10 minutes later, the temperature of the water is 12 degrees. So when the temperature is 12, that's when the time is 10 minutes. So what we do is substitute that into this. To find K, we just do the inverse. So we just ln both sides. So we get that K is equal to minus 1/10 ln of 8 over 14 or 4 over 7. Doesn't matter if you simplify it, which simplifies to 0.05596 ... Now we just want it to two significant figures because it says that in the question. So that's going to be 0.060. Now, for the third part of the question, we know that the equation is now t equals to 20 minus 14e to the power minus 0.06t, because we know what k is now. Now it says we need to find a time where the temperature is 18 degrees. So if we just do the same thing as before, we rearrange, we get the e on its own with the power, of course. And then we do the inverse by natural logging both sides to get 50 over 3 ln 7 is equal to 32.4. And it will be in minutes, of course, because that's the time that we're calculating. Now we need to explain why the model may not be appropriate to predict the temperature of the water 3 hours after it is taken out the refrigerator. Now we know temperature is not constant because we know stuff can affect it. Like room temperature wouldn't always be the same. So it can change over time. That would be your answer to this. Now, section B of the paper, this is the stats section. Now we know that this box plot is going to be negatively skewed because we know it's on this side of the box plot. And now question 12, it says to collect the sample, Shelley selects 2 groups at random and then interviewed each member of these two groups. So this gives a huge hint that this answer would be a cluster sample, because that literally explains what it is, because it's talking about groups and picking like people from each group. Now with question 13a, we just find the mean and standard deviation. So we can just plug all of this into our calculator, the list thing, and then you should get your mean and your standard deviation. 13b, what we need to find is the difference in the mean from 2002 and 2016, and then we divide it by the mean from before, which is 2002, and then we multiply it by 100 to get the percentage, which is 78.6%. And we need to show that Citi's claim of over 75% has been obtained. Since 78.6% is greater than 75%, it's going to be true. And we showed it basically. 13b, you can just say anything about that because it's large data set. So if you know your knowledge about that, you should get that. Question 14 is binomial distribution. Now we know all the probabilities, and we need to find the probability of getting at least one banana. Now we know it says for any 4 randomly selected visits to the gym. Now that means our number of trials is going to be equal to 4, and our probability is going to be 0.35. So if we put that into binomial CD, because it's at least, so it has to be the probability of x being greater than or equal to 1. That's going to be the same as writing it as 1 minus the probability of x being less than or equal to 0. So if we plug all of this in, we get an answer of 0.8215. Now with 14b, it says the same item each time. So that must mean that we want to find the probability of x being equal to 4, because that's all of the times. Because if it's greater than or equal to 4, it will be a restriction, because there's only 4 randomly selected visits. There's no more than 4. So when the probability of x equals to 4, we have the same information, we get an answer of 0.015. Now 14c, it says an apple twice and a cake twice. Now we know from before the probabilities of an apple is 0.2 and for a cake is 0.45. So we just do the same thing. Our our number of trials is still constant, because to get an apple twice and a cake twice, it's going to be 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 add up to 4. So if we put this into our PD, we get an answer of 0.1536 for an apple, and for a cake we get 0.3675. For a cake. And then we add them together to get 0.5211 to get the total probability. Now for 15, it's a probability distribution. So state in terms of k, the probability that x equals 3. Now x equals 3 is represented by the probability of kx squared. So if we substitute 3 into here, we get 9k. And then for 15b, we know that the probability of x being greater than or equal to 3 is going to be the values of 3 and 4. So if we plug that in, we should get 25k, and that's equal to 3 lots of the probability of x is less than or equal to 2, which is 1 and 2. So that's going to be 2c plus c, which is 3c. So if we simplify that, we get 25k minus 9c equals 0. I put this into this form because we can use our equation solver afterwards for simultaneous equations. Now we know from probabilities that they all add up to 1. So if we find the probability of 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then equate that to 1, we get another equation, which is 25k plus 3c equals 1. So if we solve these two simultaneously, we can just use our calculator from here. We get k is equal to 3 over 100 and c is equal to 1 over 12. Now, 16a is binomial distribution again. Now it says find the probability of obtaining exactly 6 heads from 7 tosses of the coin. And we know that the probability is 0.7. So if we put this into binomial PD, we get an answer of 0.247. To find the mean of the number of heads obtained from the 7 tosses of the coin, that's just going to be the number of trials multiplied by the probability, which is 0.49. Now with 16b, it's going to be hypothesis testing. So our H0, our probability is equal to 0.7 because we know that from before the probability is 0.7. And our H1, our probability is greater than 0.7 because Harry believes that the probability of obtaining a head for this coin is actually greater than 0.7. So that's what we're investigating. Now, the distribution is X distributes B, where N is 35 times, because that's the amount of times he tosses it, and our probability is 0.7. And we're testing the claim because we know that only 28 heads has been obtained. So the probability of X is greater than or equal to 28 is the same as 1 minus the probability of X is less than or equal to 27. We know that these two should match the inequalities, the greater than and the greater than or equal to. If it's less than, it will be less than or equal to. Now we know that if we put this into our CD calculator and we take away 1 from it, we get 0.1326. And then we compare it with the significance level, which is 10%, which is the same as 0.1. So if we do that here, we know that it's greater than, so we accept H0. Therefore, there's insufficient evidence to suggest that the probability is greater than 0.7 of obtaining a head. And then that would be your final part of the paper.